Good evening, everyone. I am reporter Chris Vanderveen here in the 9 newsroom, joined by Mark Salinger, who we're going to be talking a lot about a story that's going to be running tonight on 9 News at 9 and 10, and really sort of the background to it. This is what we're calling, we have this sort of originals team that's here. You've maybe seen some promos that are run on 9 News. There's a lot of work that goes into a story like this, and that's why we wanted to bring Mark on to talk about the work that went into it. This is a story that we've done a lot of coverage on already in a roundabout way on the fentanyl overdoses and people who are dying because of fentanyl. But you took a bit of a different perspective and talk to me about that process you went through to put this story together.
I can't tell you how many times we've probably said the word overdose, Narcan, opioid, drugs on our air over the last couple of months. I mean, we're talking about overdoses nearly every day. And it's one thing to say overdoses are happening more often. You're hearing more about fentanyl, you're hearing more about opioids, stuff like that. But it's a different thing to actually understand what that means. And what our story does is takes you through body camera videos of police officers and first responders that are responding to overdoses as they're happening. And what's so incredible about this is that you see just how quickly those first responders have to get to the person who is overdosed to try and save their life. They're using this little thing called Narcan, which is basically most commonly used as a nasal spray, which you spray in a nose, and it almost immediately starts working to reverse the effects of the overdose. So quite literally, if somebody's unconscious, it brings them back from the dead and reverses the effects of the overdose to give them a second chance at surviving.
So this is not one of those stories that sort of comes together quickly. You started asking for body camera videos, I believe, some time ago. Walk me through the process you went through to get going on this story.
Yeah, so I wanted to be able to show what this is like for first responders who are going and getting called to overdoses every day. And it's one thing to interview them and say, hey, what's your day usually like? But it's another thing to actually see them. And first responders, a lot of police officers and sheriff's departments have body-worn cameras, so they see everything. So I requested body-worn camera video from several sheriff's departments, as well as police departments, as well as Colorado State Patrol several months ago. And some were granted, some were not. Some requests were granted and some were not. And eventually we got this kind of trove of about 10 body camera videos of people responding to overdoses around the entire state, from people's apartments to Civic Center Park in downtown Denver to gas stations to parking lots. And that helps tell the story, but this is a story that we've been working on for several months.
So in addition to that, which I think is important, and I think it's important to note that there's going to be a lot of, this is a difficult story. This is a difficult story to tell. It's sort of a difficult story to watch at the same time. But I think what's important to note is that the people that you're showing tonight, they all lived, correct?
We don't want to show people dying on TV. Those are not easy videos to watch. These videos that we are going to show, everybody survives. They're still not easy videos to watch, but it's important to know that everybody did survive.
So let's talk about now when you sort of like, you decide how to put the story together. And I got the chance to watch it last night. I know I'm totally biased. I think Mark's great. This is one of the most powerful stories I've seen on this subject, perhaps ever. We already know a lot about this subject. It's sort of, we know what type of a toll it's taking on the community. But when you see this, but also you wanted to go sort of a step further with this investigation, where you didn't want to just show body cams. You found somebody else. Talk to me about who that somebody else is.
First of all, I'd encourage everybody to watch this story tonight at 10 p.m. on 9 News, because it takes you through the process of what these first responders are experiencing and how they get tied with a woman that we ended up speaking with, a woman who survived an overdose and was revived with Narcan. And we show that video of her coming back to life with the deputy who saved her. That deputy, we also spoke with him. He saved 7 people last year with Narcan, the medicine that reverses the effects of the overdose. 7 people that would have died if he wasn't there.
And she had not seen that video, correct? Until you showed it to her.
Yeah, when we spoke with her, we told her, we have this video, just letting her know that we had it, and she said, I want to see it. And she had not seen that before. She says that she didn't really remember anything from the overdose, from when it happened. She woke up and there were police officers and paramedics surrounding her, but she doesn't really remember what happened. This video that she wanted to see takes her through those moments, and it was a really difficult video to watch together. But afterwards, she said, "Thank you for showing me that, because it gives me a different perspective."
How was that for you?
It was one of the hardest conversations and hardest interviews that I've ever been in, because these are people, these are stories, these are not numbers or data points or anything like that. These are people who she's watching herself come seconds, if minutes or seconds away from dying, and it's all on video, and you have to treat that with immense respect and say, we were not planning on showing her that video. She wanted to see it, and in that time afterwards, she said that it triggered a different response in her mind of how she views that event and how it happened. And I talked to her just this morning, actually, but she told me that that she's going to detox, that she's wanting to get sober, she's wanting to get the life back that she knew before addiction completely, destroys that. She tells me that addiction is soul crushing. It just crushes your soul. And she has been dealing with that for years and years and years.
Do you think that we're at that crisis stage of overdoses? I mean, you talked at the beginning about how we have lots of numbers and statistics, and it's sort of easy in the middle of this epidemic to see those numbers and say, well, that's bad, and then you sort of see it happen in front of you, and it becomes more real. Do you think we're at a crisis stage right now?
I'll answer that question by saying this. In several of the videos, you see people who are completely lifeless. They are, for all intents and purposes, dead. They're unconscious. They're not breathing in the middle of Civic Center Park in Denver before Colorado State Patrol comes up with Narcan. You see videos of people who are in gas station parking lots. You see people who are in homes. I mean, this can happen anywhere, and it does happen everywhere. Boulder Police Department, who we also spoke with for this story, says that their officers used double the amount of Narcan from 2020 to 2021. So, I mean, now that we know that it's literally happening anywhere because people get the drugs and want to use them as soon as they get them, and officers are having to respond at twice the amount of times, we're at that point.
Let's talk about Narcan, and for people that may not be familiar with what Narcan is, what is Narcan?
So we have a really cool explainer that we're kind of, you hear the word Narcan all the time, and the city of Denver is, putting it out there that you can get free Narcan and all that. We have a really cool explainer that's airing in Next at 6 p.m., which I encourage people to watch as well. But what it is basically, doctors call it an opioid antagonist. Mm-hmm. So what that does is it's reversing the effects of the overdose. So it attaches itself to the opioid receptors, mm-hmm. and prevents you from basically being able to feel the effects of the drugs, feel that high. So if somebody's unconscious, their lips begin to turn blue, their hands begin to turn blue, and they're not breathing. Your vital functions stop. And after a couple minutes, your brain begins to have severe damage, and eventually, if nothing happens, you're dead. But the Narcan reverses that effects of those overdoses. So with the Narcan being administered directly into somebody's nose, it can also be injected into somebody's body with a needle. It begins to reverse the effects of the overdose, and with some stimulation, a lot of times you'll see people doing a sternum rub or start doing compressions, and almost immediately, I mean within seconds, if not a minute or so, people come back to life. It's an overdose reversing drug. And
that's what's amazing is people sort of like, what is it about opiates that can cause the body to sort of shut down? It's part of that. It's part of the brain that reminds the body to keep breathing, and that can sort of, in essence, sort of turn off, and it suppresses that willingness, that need to breathe, and that's how people die, right?
Exactly. And we know that there's an immense desire for Narcan. The city of Denver just started saying, hey, if you want Narcan or fentanyl test strips, you can get them for free. Mm-hmm. They sold out immediately.
Yeah, I was doing a story that we just aired a few days ago that everybody that leaves the Denver jail now is getting Narcan with them. I wonder if we've seen huge increases in overdoses. Almost all of that, and I focused particularly on Denver because I did a story a few weeks ago on Denver and overdoses, that the rise in overdoses is almost exclusively fueled by fentanyl. And that is obviously a huge concern around the community. But I also wonder, there's available Narcan in lots of places now. I sort of get the impression, I'm curious your opinion on this, is that without Narcan, without naloxone, our overdose rate could be substantially higher.
So we don't know that.
Yeah.
And I answer that because we truly don't know. Because we asked police departments, we asked Denver police and said, hey, how many times have you saved people with Narcan over the past year? And the answer that I got was, we don't keep track of that. So we truly don't know how many other people could have died if it wasn't for Narcan. One of the concerns that some people have is that people use it as a crux. They say, I'm going to take this drug, knowing that the person that I'm taking it with or the person who's in the house has Narcan, they can just revive me. And obviously that's not a good way to live or safe in any way. But we truly don't know the answer to how many people would be dead right now if Narcan wasn't available.
That's remarkable. I mean, in this day and age, that we are not keeping track of a number that could be very telling in terms of just. I think you could say this without hesitation, although I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you think it's fair to say that we know that without Narcan, without naloxone, that things would be worse
Undoubtedly.
than they are right now, and they're already bad enough?
They're really bad, but if you think about one police officer or one sheriff's deputy in one county saving 7 people in 1 year, there's, that shows how bad it is.
And what's remarkable about the video that you show is that these people are not moving. They're turning blue. They're in the process. Their body is shutting down without air to their body soon and oxygen to their brain. These are people that are going to die very, very quickly.
You see them come back to life. I mean, there are police officers saying, wake up, wake up, wake up. And they're lifeless. And then you see them come back to life and say, where am I? Where am I? And sometimes they're agitated because their high's been ruined, but they are, for all intents and purposes, dead.
Do you think this has been when the officers that you spoke to, how do they view Narcan now?
The officer that revived the woman who we speak with in our story, he finishes our interview and says, I'm just glad that she's doing better. So I asked him, is it strange for you to be running around, your county and saying, Narcanning people and reviving them when it's their choice to take these drugs? And he said, my job is to help people. And it doesn't matter, he's not the person who judges. His job is to help people. So for them, it's a tool that they won't leave the day without. They, every single time that they get into their patrol car, they have Narcan on them because they know that it could happen.
We did a series of stories years ago after the Aurora Theater shooting where officers, after that, because they knew that they might have to go into a mass casualty situation, and they all started carrying tourniquets. This seems like the same kind of thing. Anyway, you may go your entire life without putting a tourniquet on somebody, but if you have it available to you, and it seems very similar to this is the same type of mentality.
And it is worth pointing out that none of the officers that I spoke with say this, but there are people who hide behind a keyboard perhaps who will say, why are you reviving them? It's their choice. And there is that train of thought where people are saying, Narcan should only be reserved for people who accidentally overdosed or anything. But some people say it isn't a straight issue. There is controversy where people say, no, Narcan should not be used on people who have overdosed. So there shouldn't be county resources that are being allocated to that. So there is some controversy to it as well.
I wonder why that is. I wonder what gets to the bottom of I think we as a country have sort of for far too long sort of viewed as addiction not as sort of a mental a health issue, but sort of a choice issue. Which clearly there's intermix of two, but to pretend in this day and age, it's 2022, that addiction doesn't have a health component to it seems a bit naive.
Yes, absolutely. And this can happen to anybody. The way that fentanyl is laced right now, it's not like people are saying, oh, this is fentanyl, I'm going to take it. Fentanyl, just a little grain can go as far as killing you. And if it's laced in something that you don't know, so a lot of people are taking sleeping pills or things for anxiety that they end up not knowing is laced with fentanyl if they didn't get them from the store, if they got them from a friend or something like that. And a lot of people are accidentally overdosing. It's not like people are saying, I'm going to take fentanyl. There it is. So it truly could happen to people who are not intending to take drugs.
Well, and even people who are intending to take drugs. I mean, there's a value of a life. There's sort of a value of like people can get help. There's plenty of examples of people who have changed their lives around. Hopefully, you may have interviewed somebody that's on the verge of turning her life around, and we'll get to know tonight.
Yeah, I mean, nobody should die because of one choice, right? And that's what Narcan does, is help give those people who maybe made a bad choice a second chance at getting clean, at getting better.
So let's talk one final time. Your story tonight. What do you hope that people walk away from after they watch this tonight?
A new perspective. You hear about overdoses all the time. We tell you about the fact that there are more overdoses happening in Denver, but this is a story that aims to show you a new perspective on what that actually means, with the view of police officers, sheriff's deputies, first responders going to see people who have overdosed and bringing them back to life. And in the videos that we will show you, everybody does come back to life, but it's pretty remarkable to see how that happens.
It's Mark. Again, like I said, I'm totally biased here, but I have not seen a more powerful story on this subject than the story you're going to see tonight at 9 and 10. It is a remarkable story, and I want to thank you for putting it together, and I want to thank you for coming on and talking about this. Anything else?
I want to thank the people who shared their story with us, because it's not easy to get up in front of a camera and say, I overdosed. That's not easy to do. But for the woman who did, I think that, she is helping, perhaps I'd like to think that she is helping somebody else who is in that same position say, yeah, I can get clean too.
Excellent thought. Excellent idea. So thank you so much for joining us. And again, look forward to that story tonight on 9 News at 9 and 10.